Tethered and Whole, the podcast for classroom teachers navigating the beautiful chaos of education and looking for ways to feel more grounded. I'm your host, Matt Weld. I've been doing a lot of listening lately, talking with educators, reflecting on some recent observations, and a few powerful themes have really emerged. They intertwine in fascinating ways, and I think they're crucial for us, not just as teachers, but as people shaping the next generation. One question I hear constantly from teachers is, how can we motivate our kids? It's the million-dollar question, right? We pour our hearts into designing engaging lessons, building relationships, but sometimes it just feels like we're pushing against an invisible wall of apathy. Speaking of pushing and moving, I saw a statistic on my Fitbit app last week that really stuck with me. It said people are taking 900 fewer steps per day now than pre-pandemic. Think about that. 900 steps. And that's not just a number on an app. It's a measurable decline in our physical activity and, by extension, our well-being. This brings me to something fundamental. We need to move more, and so do our kids. Any school system that diminishes recess, playtime, or sports is doing a profound disservice to kids and their long-term mental health. Our muscles, believe it or not, are an integral part of our endocrine system, storing and producing hormones critical for learning, for memory, and even our mental health. But we have to use them, move them, for them to function properly. See, movement isn't just about physical fitness. It's about optimizing our brains and our emotional resilience. Tony Robbins says something like, physiology determines psychology. My grandfather was a pediatrician and later a specialist in adolescent medicine. He would always say, if you're bored, go outside. It's kind of hard to be outside and to not move. This leads directly to the concept of resilience. Here is a concept I want you to remember. Resilience is increased by doing hard things when the conditions are good, so that when the conditions are poor, it's not a new, overwhelming action. It's a practice. It's a familiar routine that our body can fall back on. It's a muscle that we build. Speaking of building, let's talk a little bit about discipline. It's a powerful word and often misunderstood. Discipline comes from love, not intimidation. Disciples follow prophets out of a mutual love, not out of fear. Did you catch the shared root word there? Discipline and disciple both stem from disciplina, meaning instruction or teaching. When we think about classroom management, student behavior, or even our own habits, framing discipline through the lens of relationship and love rather than just control shifts everything. Discipline, whether with our students or with ourselves, is fundamentally about relationships. The relationships people in charge have with their subordinates, like adult to child or administrator to staff, and perhaps most importantly, the relationship that we have with ourselves. Now, let's tie all these threads together. Technology, for all its wonders, can undeniably promote laziness. With services like DoorDash, Amazon overnight delivery, Instacart, that kind of thing, we barely need to exert any energy to maintain a comfortable existence. In fact, I read an article the other day about China's rat people. These are young people whose goal is to spend the least amount of energy. They even have competitions as to who can spend the least amount of energy. And so they scroll and they sleep in bed, getting up in order to order food and to use the bathroom. This goes against everything our bodies were designed to do. If we're going to create a life that truly matters for ourselves and for our students, we need self-discipline and perseverance. We need to be able to stick to a decision once it's been made, even when it's the hard thing to do. We need to believe that our path is the right path, despite all the critics. A key feature to finishing what we set out to do is grit. Angela Duckworth, a leading expert on grit, defines it as passion and perseverance toward very long-term goals. She also notes that experts are more interested in what they did wrong so that they can fix it than in what they did right. And that's a powerful mindset shift for all of us. In my mind, there is a fine line between grit and perfectionism. It takes willpower and sacrifice to achieve goals. But what happens when we become so fixated on the product that the joy of the process is lost? What happens when the goal is met, but the process has consumed so much of our life and our heart that we can't let go? What happens when grit keeps us on a path of improvement to a point where there really aren't any more gains left to be made, and perhaps our energy and skills could be better used elsewhere? It really is a balancing act. And I'd argue that the biggest barrier to both grit and self-discipline is distraction. It's far easier to give our time and energy to a fleeting, meaningless distraction like our phones than it is to put the same energy and time into building something worthwhile. Managing our distractions is critical. What's distracting you today from your goals? Is it listening to me on this podcast? What sucks your time during your waking hours that could be spent bettering yourself or achieving your goals? You probably thought about your phone, maybe the TV, or other tech devices. And yes, those often are the culprits. But there's another major hindrance to achievement, and that, my friends, is apathy. As Letty Cotton Pogrebin said, apathy is the self-defense of the powerless. Apathy literally means without feeling. That's not just healthy, especially since humans are emotional beings at our core. So as I travel to schools and talk to teachers and administrators, there's a lot of discussion these days about student apathy toward learning, testing, achievement, and frankly, to school in general. My initial thought when I hear that is to wonder, is this apathy a learned behavior? Could it be a natural result, the easy road from either too much or too little for too long? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, so please put them in the comments. Ultimately, people care and work for what is meaningful to them. Is school one of those things for our students? Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've touched on it in previous episode. Safety and security come from structure and real non-digital relationships. If we are to transform our lives into ones that matter, we need to ensure that we are actively participating and finding significant meaning in what we do. If people don't have something to believe in or work for that is connected to their identity, apathy shows up. It's as if there are reserved seats in life. If we don't show up and claim them, something or someone else will. If we don't take ownership of our basic needs, either we give them up or we give them away. I'm not saying we can't rely on other people or that we don't need help. We can and we do. Rather, we need to see, these are mine. These seats are my responsibility. We can ask for and receive help raising and educating our children. We absolutely can ask for and receive financial help from friends and family. And we can ask for and receive emotional support when showing up is hard. But it's then on our terms. We haven't given it away to somebody else. Second major barrier to grit is self-discipline. A second major barrier to grit and self-discipline is avoidance. Mark Manson articulates this powerfully when he says, quote, "The avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering. The avoidance of struggle is a struggle. The denial of failure is a failure. Hiding what is shameful is itself a form of shame." In my own journey toward increased self-awareness, I often reflect on how much I avoid doing things that I think will be uncomfortable. Not just the truly painful stuff, but the the merely uncomfortable. How truly uncomfortable would it be to stop 5 times a day and do 20 push-ups? It would barely cause any discomfort. 20 seconds times 5 is less than 2 minutes. Tack on a couple more minutes for transitioning, and there I am, still under 5 minutes. 5 minutes for something that would yield wide-ranging benefits. And yet, here I sit. Here I sit, also thinking about the significance and prevalence of avoidance in schools. How many conversations are avoided? How many opportunities for connection are missed? How much real work is never accomplished simply because we think doing it might bring a twinge of discomfort? And let's be honest, folks. Actually showing up and doing the work is almost never as bad as we imagine it will be. Sometimes just showing up is the hardest thing to do. Brene Brown has a quote that says, sometimes the bravest and most important thing you can do is just show up. We've all had those days when just getting out of bed seems like too much, when going through our daily routines feels monumental. Yeah, it happens. When our kids were little, my wife and I viewed our days in 4 stages. There was the morning routine, there was work. We were both teachers, administrators. Then there was after school routine, and then our own school work. Wash, rinse, repeat. It seemed endless. Nothing's permanent, however. That's the good news. As my grandma always reminded me, this too shall pass. Simply showing up is sometimes the best you can do. It usually seems, however, that once you start moving, momentum takes over, and it's all okay. Movement in any form seems to be the key. So, when you're stuck, here are a few techniques and a few strategies to try. First of all, break down your to-do list into the smallest tasks. Crossing them off provides that initial momentum, that movement that we're all looking for. Second, revisit your boundaries. Maybe today is when you really need to defend them. Protect your energy and your time. Just remember, showing up means you are willing to accept any outcome. So you want to remain present as much as possible, focusing on the moment, the here and now, not the imagined future discomfort. Number 3, the next time you feel a bit uncomfortable, lean into the discomfort. If the room's too cold, it's okay. If you have to actually expend energy to get something you want or need, do it. Our bodies weren't designed for all this luxury, and we are starting to see the results of it. So be intentional with your actions. You have a limited amount of time and energy. What will you bless with it today? Strategy number 4, start small. Instead of trying to create an end-of-the-year extravaganza, what about taking the time to circle the desks and have an open conversation about things like, what are you afraid of? Or, what brings you comfort? The next time you feel disgust or hate or fear, maybe in regard to another person, take a moment, even if it's hours or days later, and do an inner dive as to why you felt that way. And I wonder, and I lean with curiosity, if it's because you don't like the same or something similar about yourself. And number 5 is for your to-do list. Find the thing you least want to do. Just take a few seconds and figure out why that's so, why it's the bottom of your list, and then move it to the top and do it first. So, thank you all for tuning in. I hope these thoughts give you something to chew on this week, both for yourself and for your students. Until next time, keep tethering those big ideas to tangible actions and keep showing up. See you next week.